growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money. So unfortunately, I wasn't one of those kids that sort of got given everything on a silver platter. My mum was a single mum. She ended up marrying my stepdad. He didn't have that great of a wage. My mum didn't work. If you continue to like stay comfortable or just, things are okay, then what happens is that you never kind of level up, like what you're saying. So you don't know what you're made of unless you put yourself in those situations where you have to prove it. Because I started doing clubs because I loved it. I started running events because I loved it. I love music, I love people, I love whatever. I love putting these things on. So this thing has been around for like 20 years. It's a household name in my opinion. And we checked it and no one had owned the worldwide trademark for wet pussy. So we went through the process of trademarking it. It took like 6 months, you have to wait for it to go through, and then it got accepted. The first month we sold 4 pellets. Then the 2 weeks after that we sold 8. Then there was 16 by the end of the month. The next month was, I think, 20. And then the month after that we sold 55 pellets. So we've been around for 6 months now and we're just shy of 2 mil rev.
So that together we have clarity, direction, and success way beyond what we ever previously thought possible. Here's your host, Frankie Lee.
Welcome back to the Frankie Lee podcast. Right, today, guys, we've got another barnstormer, a true entrepreneurial journey to record. This is literally like the equivalent of the Australian dream, I'd call it. We've got Danny Grant, who's owner of 80 proof liquor. He created the wet pussy of all drinks throughout this lockdown, right? It's an unbelievable story, that one. But he also owns Empire Nightclub and Cha-Cha's, and his whole nightclub journey has been a massive learning curve for him as well. Buying his first nightclub at 26 years old. He's done bits, he's been down, he's been out, he's come back, and this is going to be a true entrepreneurial story that you guys can all resonate with. I truly believe it. Danny, mate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Frankie. How are you?
Mate, I'm buzzing about this. I'm buzzing about this because this is what when you reached out to me and I kind of understood what you'd achieved in the last year alone. Like, it's just, being nearly, when COVID wiped you out and wiped out the nightclubs and that, you obviously had to pivot and all that stuff, and we're going to go into that. But I think before we go into that and how you've blown up in the drinks space, I think the best place to start is like, how do you even get into the position to be able to buy a nightclub at 26 years old? Like, give the audience a bit of an insight into your journey to get to that point.
Well, to be honest, like growing up, my family didn't have a lot of money. So unfortunately, I wasn't one of those kids that sort of got given everything on a silver platter. So when I was a kid, I sort of quickly realized that things weren't going to get given to me because my family didn't have much cash. My mum was a single mum. She ended up marrying my stepdad. He didn't have that great of a wage. My mum didn't work, blah, blah, blah. So from that point, in a sense, it's almost like a bittersweet, but I kind of figured out that if I wanted something, I had to figure out how to do it myself. So from when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I was washing cars. Like, I used to knock on people's doors and just be like, hey, look, if I wanted to buy football cards or something like that, I'd be like, I'll wash a car for $5, and then I'd sort of start to make my own money. That was good and bad. I obviously did some good things. I obviously did some bad things in that journey, but eventually I kind of came good and I sort of figured out how to make money in a better way and sort of how to, I guess, pivot all the skills that I'd learned throughout that journey into doing stuff positively.
Yeah. Because we can all get taken down the wrong path, especially in like suburban cities and that, like suburbia.
Yeah, for me, it was definitely like a fine line. I could have gone either way, but happily for my journey that I didn't, and I kind of went the right way. Did you
ever get in much trouble as a kid?
Yeah, plenty, man. Like a lot of just like normal stuff for kids. Like I was always sort of a lot of, I don't know, it's hard to say, but like a kind of some assault stuff and some early days, some like break and enter things and stuff like that. So it wasn't unusual that the police would come knocking at the doors to sort of see me, but it was something that I was sort of used to because my family had been that way. Yeah. So if it wasn't for me, it was for mum or my sisters or whatever. Yeah. And so it was something that we were accustomed to because that's kind of the way I grew up. But
because you grew up, Danny, that way, like, how did you go about breaking that mindset of being involved in that? Because obviously you are a product of your environment, and I try and tell people on the podcast all the time, like, if you surround yourself with a certain type of person, you are going in that direction. You're going to be in that kind of space, So obviously your family were, doing a few naughty things here, there, and everywhere. A bit of breaking, a bit of entering, all this kind of stuff. Like, how did you break away from that when that was your environment? And what kind of made you pivot and think, fucking hell, there's a better way than this?
Like honestly, it was sort of, I was doing a mix of things. Like I was, as I said, washing cars and stuff, and then I was stealing alcohol from houses and stuff like that, like different things like that. And I was selling it at school, blah blah blah. And at a point, I kind of realized that money, there was no longevity in it. It was just like a quick grab and you kind of move on. And my family, I just got sick of it, man. Like there's so many times that you can eat sausages and mashed potatoes, and I was like sort of 16, 17, and I'm like, fuck this. Like I just dropped out of school. I was like drinking all the time, smoking marijuana, like doing all the things that I was supposed to do. So that was sort of like the lane that I was supposed to drive down. And then I just remember it was like just a pivotal point where I was like, I went to the city. So I was originally from like out up north of Victoria.
Yeah.
And I came back down to visit some aunt and uncles and stuff. And I was helping them paint a house, and they sort of lived normally, and my house was like chaotic. There was always drinking and people coming and going, and it was like you could do whatever you wanted. It was like you could have a party on a Tuesday night till 1 o'clock in the morning if you wanted.
Yeah.
So I sort of saw that normality, and then something resonated in me where I was like, well, there's a better life. Like there's a better way of doing this, and I don't want to continue to kind of create and develop this circle for my own kids and for myself moving forward. And then I got a taste of that, and then from there I was like, all right, well, my whole perspective changed. So instead of like the quick dash and grab, and don't get me wrong, I still fell in and out of it and did stupid things the whole way along till I probably hit 21.
Yeah.
But then I got to a point where I was like, fighting wasn't really getting me anywhere. So every time I got in a fight, all I did was get in trouble. I would get banned. I'd lose jobs. I'd do all these things. So I was like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense anymore. And all the other stuff I was doing was just like, it came with a bad outcome. But all the positive things I was doing were coming with great outcomes. So, and I was lucky, like I met a girl and she sort of gave me sort of some solid foundations, and her family were different than mine. So they grew up the opposite. And I sort of was like, well, this is what I want. Like, this is how I want to do that. So I sort of just used all those things, good and bad, that I'd learned over those last 14, 15 years of like growing up. And I put them all into the right energy. I pushed forward and I started to make success. So for me, man, it was like, put my head down. I'm lucky. Like most people had to go like work in a factory or do whatever. I luckily was sort of in this thing where I was nightclubbing flat out. I was meeting people, networking, and I guess because of the way I'd grown up, I'd always like loved to be out and loved to socialize and stuff. So for me, I was like, I fell into it almost. But the thing I guess the differentiation between me and others that fell into it is that I really quickly figured out how to make proper money from it. So I sort of fell into it. And I was like, cool, all right. So I was getting, say, $3 a guest list for working for a club. And like within 2 months, I remember they had these like prizes. And if you did the most amount of numbers, you'd win like a slab or a limo for you and your friends or whatever. And I was sort of like, fuck, like I started doing the maths backwards. And I'm like, these dudes are killing it. Like they're making serious cash off me. Like this is what I'm bringing in. This is my portion. Because I'd sort of done those simple maths before selling cigarettes or washing cars or doing whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I was like, I reckon I'm going to try and do this myself. And I did. So I literally walked up the road, knocked on the door of a club, and I was like, hey, like I've got people that I can bring here. Can I take the money from the door and then you take the money from the bar? And the guy was like, yeah. So I made some really quick money. And like anybody who grew up like me, I wasted a lot of money at the start. So
what were you wasting the money on? Like drugs, drink, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, just stupid shit, man. Like I remember one time I bought a boat, like just for no reason. So I was just like, as soon as it came into my hand, I was getting rid of it. Like I would just grab like clumps of cash and just take it out and just party.
What kind of money were you generating each week doing that?
Dude, I remember I was doing these one events. It was like I was bringing in like 15 to 20K per event. So they were like every 6 weeks. So I was bringing in, I'd hate to even do the maths on it. Like I was bringing in some serious cash when I was younger from doing that sort of stuff. But on a week, I'd say anywhere between, it could be the other way where I'd make $400, but there was also weekends where I'd make 5,000, and I was only like 20, 21 year in. So I was just spending it like on like anything you can think of that you should like, you can spend money in excess. I was doing. So I was like, I remember playing like Tekken, man, like Tekken the video game, and I'd pump like $300-400 into that a week, just playing Tekken at the local like pinball parlor, like anything that I could do. I was just like easy come, easy go, because I'd never been taught like financial smarts, if that makes sense. So for me, it was like in my family, like if we had any sort of windfall, it was go party or go buy shit we don't need, or like that's how we lived.
100%, man.
Yeah, and then that was like a really big thing for me was when I moved. So I actually got kicked out of school, and then I sort of did nothing for 6 months and like smoking marijuana, rah rah. And then my family sort of got a gutful of me from back there, which is a big feat. But they were like, all right, you got to move on. So I moved on to the city, so Melbourne. And when I started, so I didn't work for a bit there, and I was sort of just like flopping around, not doing much. And then I originally was like, fuck this, I don't want to work this hard. Like I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, working in this window factory, and I was like, this sucks. Like, what's my options here? Go back to school. Like that seems to be an easier route. So my auntie sort of figured out a way to get me back into school. But when I went to that school, I sort of met people who they were financially better off than the people I'd grown up with, like where I lived.
Is that because you changed sides of the cities kind of thing? So like you're seeing a different side of the coin and how
I
other
use
people
this as an
lived.
example, man. I think you'll find this interesting. But when I was growing up in the town that I grew up in, the conversations that were being had were like how to evade tax, how to get more money from Centrelink, how to say that you're divorced to your husband so you can get paid more money for single mother's allowance. Like they were the conversations.
Yeah.
Whereas when I moved down to where I was living after, when I was 18, 16 to 18, the conversations were like how to make more money from the money that you saved, how to invest your cash, they were the conversations. So the conversations were so different. And to be honest, if I hadn't have gotten in that trouble, been expelled, kicked out of home, and this is the thing with me, like my whole life is bittersweet. And as we go through this story, it'll be the same. It's like every time something bad happens to me, it's like something good comes from it. Does that make sense? So,
I just want to drill into that, Danny, because like, I think it's so important that the audience picks up on what you've just said there, because you've just basically done what I did, because I changed on my environment. You know, I thought I'm not happy in this job in the UK. I don't want to be a carpenter anymore. I can't achieve certain things in this sport, or do this that I want. I've bought the house, I've done the thing, I've got the mortgage, I've got the sports car, I've got all that on the driveway, and I still feel like unfulfilled. Yeah. So I thought, how can I expand my mindset? Okay, I'm going to go to Australia. I'm going to open my mind up. Now, some people are in friend groups and around people at this moment in time where they're not able to fully expand and take the blinkers off and open their mindset because of the environment they surround themselves with, and the conscious thing that I want everyone to identify from this is the fact that you can choose to be in any environment that you wish to be in. Like, for sure. That's essentially what Danny's done. He's like, look, this environment is only just causing me shit and problems and drama and everything like that. If I just move the environment over here, now I've taken these horse blinkers off and I'm opening my mindset to it. And that's some powerful shit. If you just see how simple it is, you can change your life in literally 48 hours. That's what I'm trying to say to people, you know?
I 100% agree, man. And like, that's the thing for me, as I said, like, obviously me doing that was force of circumstance. Like I didn't want to do that, but I look back at it now, it was the best thing. But in saying that, it's not all like flowers and roses in a sense. Like I still did the same shit again. So like I kind of went back there, met these people, went to school, met these other dudes who were fucking up. I continued to fuck up with them. I was sort of leaning that way again. So it wasn't just like I like had a holy wash and got baptized and I was sweet. It's like I continued to play that road for a little. And then it was only when I got to, say, 2021 when I was like, I'm repeating the same fucking thing again, like for no reason. And I think it's because you become a creature of circumstance, and to be in those situations becomes easy and comfortable. And the reality of it is that comfortable is not necessarily good.
Comfort is when you're telling yourself that you need to start upping the gears again. Do you know what I mean? I'm just seeing it in my life on a personal level. It's like, okay, I'm getting a bit comfortable in this area, and now I'm going all in again to try and raise the game of contentremoval.com as a business, and I'm trying to move the needle in that business, and I'm trying to level up this podcast, and I'm trying to put out more valuable content to the world. And it's the same with you. It's like once you got that little bit of comfort in your life, it's like, well, actually, settling isn't a human's game. You know what I mean? You got to be happy in the place. You got to enjoy the journey and be peaceful and mindful of the fact of enjoy every day and be present. But you should never just get to a point and then just be satisfied, because that
for sure. And like for me, man, it's just like I work better when the house is on fire. Yeah, and so it's like a lot of the time I light it up. Like there's so many times in my story and my journey where I'm like, okay, things are pretty comfortable here. I'm doing okay. And then I'm just like, fuck, match of gasoline, bang, let's see how this goes. And then it works, like it continues to work. Because if you continue to like stay comfortable or things are okay, then what happens is that you never kind of level up, like what you're saying. So you don't know what you're made of unless you put yourself in those situations where you have to prove it. And I almost, to a sense now, I sometimes think I get addicted to that. Like when things are getting too good and comfortable, I'm like, how do I jump back in the deep end? Yeah, and like, because every time I have, I've come out better. And I think everyone I watch do it, like say 90% of the time, not to say it's a 100% hit rate, but most people I know that do jump in the deep end or take that plunge that they've sort of been thinking about or too scared to take for 5-10 years, it's like they end up killing it. Like how many stories is there of guys that thought they were stuck in a job because they did it for 10 years, then they quit and did this and now they're living their best life. It's like, that's a pretty common story in my opinion that I hear. But what's more common is people just not doing it. So they live their whole lives hating what they do because they think that that's what they've got to do. Like, and that just, in my opinion, just like, I don't understand it. Like I get a lot of guys that'll be like, oh man, I hate what I do. Like I'm a plumber, it stinks, I can't fucking stand it. But then I might quit, man. They're like, well, I can't though because I've done my thing. I'm like, you did a full, you're gonna work. That's only 10% of what, of course, or figure it out. Like you will figure it out. That sort of stops people from moving forward.
Yeah, mate. I think at the end of the day, right? Like for me on a personal level, it's like when it comes down to just take cash in the bank, for instance, right? If I have loads and loads of cash in the bank from doing business and that, my kind of, you got this like security blanket, so you can kind of get a little bit complacent. So what I do is I take it all out and I invest it. So that I've got a low cash position, so that it shits me up, so that I work harder.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise, I end up just sat there like, oh, I can coast through this and coast through that. Whereas now, when I look at my cash position, I'm like, oh fuck me, I gotta do something. You know what I mean? I gotta get moving because like I want this much in the bank. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when I get it, I get rid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Into something.
You've got to figure out ways to motivate yourself, and that's the thing. It's like
100%.
It's easy if you can't figure those things out, then you're never going to motivate yourself.
Yeah.
Like, be it get up for a run or start a new business. It's like you got to figure out. And for me, it's chaos. Like that's like, and I think for a lot of people it is. But it's like if I'm struggling, I do better. Like I'll work harder.
Yeah.
If I'm in a not comfortable position, I'll continue to do like I'll work harder and do better. Yeah. And so. But yeah, for me, man, I was working on that, and then I had a brain shift where I was sort of like, okay, cool, I'm wasting all this money, like I'm not doing all these right things. So I started to like go to people that I knew and respected who had done better than I had. And I was sort of like, oh, well, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with the money you're making or whatever?
Yeah.
And now like I'm investing in property, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, cool. So then I did the opposite. So I went from like spending every cent that I can, like easy come, easy go, to like keeping it all. I bought an investment property. I did a couple of different things, and I was young. I was like 23, 24. And then I started to like be smart with my money, and I started to learn how to make more money from the money that I was earning. And then, so when I got the opportunity to buy a club at 26, I was like, I had the cash there, whereas a lot of guys in my situation didn't. What
kind of money was this? How much money was the club back in the day?
So the whole build cost us just under $1 million. So and I've got partners obviously, but it basically was a shitty old pool hall in the suburbia of Melbourne.
Yeah.
It had a pretty bad reputation. It was run down. Had been owned by bikies prior.
Yeah.
Sorry, give me a second. And it was almost like it was a stink pit. Like there was people like just bulldoze the joint, like it's done. So then we were like, I reckon that we can bring this back up. And I'd done a lot of that in the city for other clubs. Like I'd come back and revived their venues that people thought they were dead. Like, so we polished the turd. And we sort of put some new lights in. And the biggest part, man, was selling the story. So like a lot of the guys that were coming, I was like, hey, like I know this is a piece of shit. I know you think it's a piece of shit because that's how you've sort of like viewed it for the last couple of years. But I'm like, this is my vision, this is my dream, this is what we're going to do. And I remember I had like a piece of paper and I had just some photos like of what I wanted to make it look like. And I had all these people coming in. I was like, dude, this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to look like. So I got them to invest in the story and then they sort of believed this. And the crazy thing was when we did open it, the reputation sort of, it continued to like become a hindrance. So when we first started, I was like, okay, cool, this thing's completely polished. Like we spent $1 million on it. It looks unbelievably good. And we only had 600 people come. And I was like, fuck. And I remember being in the disabled toilets here. And I was like physically ill because I'm just like, I've put literally every single cent I've got every single piece of like money that I've saved in the last year. On top of that, every bit of money I had in the income to this I've spent, and I've left all my jobs that I was comfortable in to do this venture. So I'm sitting in the toilet and I'm like physically ill. I'm like, oh my fucking God, what have I done? And then the next night was like 700. Then the next night was like 800. Then the next night was 900. And then we started doing like 1200 for like years and years consistently after that. But I was like, fuck me, man. Like that was a really, really, like that tested the old cannolis, like when I did that one. But it ended up paying off, as I said, like again. And we continued to like could put our heart into it and invest in what we believed it was going to become. And it did. And we've been here for almost 9 years now. So it's become like an institution.
Mate, to obviously revive, and I've got mates that revive nightclubs in the UK, man. It's not an easy thing to revive. No. You know, there's a lot that goes into reviving a nightclub and renovating it, and obviously you have to put a lot of cash up. Obviously, along comes COVID and completely annihilated you and shut all your clubs. I mean, in Victoria now, Melbourne, I think you spent like 250 the last 300 and something days
more. So it's like we're at like 320 now that we've been closed hospitality, and we haven't had zero restrictions since last March. So even when we are open, we've had some form of capacity restrictions.
Really? So how many days in the last 12 months has that club been open?
Oh fuck, less than it's been open. Like I reckon, maybe 25 times since last March.
But I bet your rates are still there. I bet your rent's still there. I bet you're not getting no let up on all that.
At the start, man, we did. Not now. So like this time now, we're sort of being left in the dark a bit. Like the government has helped us, but a lot of it's like bullshit. It just makes them look good, but it's actually hard to access, so you're not able to get it. And then the rent, like we can't not pay the rent. Like the world's got to continue to tick over. So unfortunately, yes, she can't make us pay it up front, but we still owe it. So when we open, we've just got to, the first 4, 5, 6 weeks, we'll just be paying back the rent that we owe for when we weren't open. So it's a bit of a nightmare thing, man. Like I never, ever in a million years thought this could ever happen. Like, and again, thank God I didn't stay complacent and just live week to week, because if I had it, I would have been in some serious trouble.
Well, this was it though, but you were living off your cash reserves, as far as I'm aware, and then you had to go back to working a job after years of being like, you know, financially free and everything like that, and owning the club and everything that was going on for you. You had to go back working a job. Give people a bit of an insight into that and then how it opened up into what you're doing now, because I think it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal journey, mate.
Yeah, so like obviously I've been working in the entertainment industry for 16 years. So other than owning clubs, I also own one of the bigger kind of club promotion companies. So I still do a lot of stuff in Melbourne, everywhere actually, like Queensland, not so much Sydney anymore, but used to. I work in record labels, manage artists, I've done stuff. So entertainment's been my bread and butter for the last 16 years. So I've not really even worked. Like I worked at Safeway as a kid part-time, that was it. And I remember my grandpa saying to me years ago, because he would rather me go to uni than run nightclubs. I think any grandfather would. But he sort of said to me, well, at least you picked a pretty stable industry. He's like, because people are always going to drink alcohol no matter what. Like that's just the way it's been for thousands of years, and it'll continue to be. And I remember thinking like, oh, sweet, like that's true. Like, and we have our ups and downs in our industry. It's because it's like hype based. It's you have your roller coaster, so you've always got to prepare. Even when you're winning, you're preparing to lose, if that makes sense. So that kind of model, luckily for me, it was instilled so that it kind of prepared me for what was to come. But I never thought, I don't know, to be honest, and it might sound dumb, but I thought pandemics were like something that happened in the olden days. Like I didn't think it could happen anymore. And now that we know what's happened, it's like it seems absolutely retarded that I thought that. But for us, man, it was so quick. Like it was like we knew and heard about COVID, and then it was like on the Wednesday night, I remember seeing that they were shutting down, I can't even remember, they were talking about shutting down the NBA. Then I woke up on the Thursday and they shut down the NBA, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, how can this happen? This can't happen. That same day I heard that bars and clubs had closed in America, and I'm like, oh man, hopefully that doesn't happen here. And then on the Friday it was done, we were done. So everything was closed. So it happened in like a period of like 48 hours. I sort of got on the phone, panicked. So I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? So I just come out of the festival season, but the last month I still had to go. So I had a couple of like ventures. So I built this like giant sandbar beach in the middle of suburbia on a lake and whatever. So I had this thing that I'd spent some serious cash on building.
Yeah.
And that had been open for 2 weeks. So it was meant to run for another 6. So that had to shut straight away. So I lost every single penny on that. And I'd just come out of another festival I did in northeast Victoria, which was like a 3,500 person festival, but I sort of got shafted on the deal, so I lost a bit of cash on that. And then another business that owed me money, they'd obviously lost money because they were doing festivals. So it was actually a company that I sold to someone, and I was still in a non-compete, so I was working with them. So anyway, so they kind of went under, and all these things happened. So all this money that I had, my cash reserve for winter, had disappeared on the same day that this all happened. So I was actually in a pretty scary place. Like all the things that I taught myself to make sure for a rainy day, I'd stopped because I was sort of, it was poor, it was super sunny for a while, if that makes sense. So all my values and all the laws that I kind of created to make sure that I was protected, I sort of wasn't living by at that point. And I didn't think all these things could happen. So everything crashed over. And at that point, there was no, like, the government didn't talk about support. They didn't say they were going to help anybody out. It was just like, you're shut, this is how it's going. So I sort of got on the phone, I started messaging people, like, I'm like, I need work, like, I'm fucked, like, I don't know how I'm going to, what am I going to do? So then I got a message from a mate who worked in the markets, like they work at night time and they pack all the fruit and veg, because when COVID hit, the fruit and veg, like, you know, like everyone was buying all the toilet paper, blah, blah, blah. So so I went and helped him for a bit, and I was working there sort of nights. So I was starting at like 10 p.m. at night and working till 10 a.m. And so I was doing that, but slowly,
how did that feel in your head, like having to go back to working like that again after so many years of being like the entrepreneur, like the go-to guy in Australia for events and all that kind of stuff that you're doing? It's not like you were running a small show, is it? Like,
nah, it was humbling in a sense, yeah. And so I was like, one of the things I remember thinking when I was working for him, even though I was literally a lackey, like I was sweeping the floors and helping people stack forklifts. So I was the bottom of that food chain. But in my head, I just kept thinking, I want to make sure, because this guy's helped me out, he's my mate.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm going to work the way I want my workers to work, if that makes sense. So to be fair, it was like, because everything was so like, I guess, I don't know how to explain it, but like everything was so like ridiculous at that point. I was just like, all right, all I need to do is focus on the micro. And the micro is that I've been given a job for now to get back on my feet.
Yeah.
And I need to work as hard as I'd expect someone to work for me for this guy. So it was a bit humbling, but like, fuck man, the hours are crazy. Like, hats off to those dudes. Like they work 12 hours overnight, go home, sleep for a couple of hours and get back up and do it. Like, it was pretty crazy to go from working when I wanted to then working like that with like structure and whatnot. It's
kind of like you have to take on this kind of like immigrant mentality when you face things like this. It's like, if I lost everything tomorrow, then I would be like, okay, cool, I'll just go be a carpenter again, and I'll go be a labourer to earn enough money to go buy tools again, then I'll get tools, then I'll become a carpenter again, and then I'll go and, then I'll find a way and I'll get my builder's license, and I'll build a house, and then I'll do this and I'll do that, and that's just how I'll grind my way back up to it. It's like, you have to take that mentality with everything. That Australia as a country has been so lucky and so abundant, and when you're brought up as a kid here, like, I would say 80% of kids have it pretty good here. Like,
sure.
Do you know what I mean? Obviously there's cases which aren't the case, but it's pretty fucking abundant here. It's pretty abundant to make money. When things like this happens, it really shows you that, like, your whole rug can be pulled from underneath you, and you just, like, overnight, Danny, like, you're sitting there, like, you had a lot of cash, then you put a lot of cash into events that you just thought were going to go ahead, and then they all got smashed and shut down, and then you're back working for $1,000 a week. It's not. It's like, people got to understand that, that it you have to separate your ego from it as well when you get humbled like that.
I think that another one too for me was, like, again, like, so the guys that worked for me, so I had to sack them all in straight away. So, like, basically, when that happened, I should say sack, but let them go. So when that happened, I sort of called my team, and at that given point, I probably had, 14, 15 dudes directly relying on my businesses to create income for their family. So I sort of called them and I was like, hey, this is happening, get a job, I've done it, so follow suit. So almost in a sense, other than the fact that I wanted to ensure that things were working okay for me, I wanted to continue to be a leader to them, because if it wasn't too, if I wasn't too good for it, then they couldn't be too good for it, if that makes sense. So, and all the guys that worked for me, they did do that. And I kind of like I really wanted to set the example for them to kind of make sure that they continue to work well and sort of, I guess, back off what I've done, so that I could be a good role model to them. And they all come back and work for me again. But and that's what I sort of promised them once that it all happened. But yeah,
mate, and it's good. You have to lead by example in these cases, and obviously, I hate the word, but it was an unprecedented time. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of,
and that was the thing. Like,
we'd never seen things like that before. You know?
Yeah, and I still had cash reserve, but I was also like, well, how long can I live on this for? Because they were talking like, it's been 2 years now, but they were saying that originally. So I was like, all right, well, I don't have enough to live off for 2 years and not have to work. And at that time, my wife wasn't really working. She was working like a day a week or something.
Yeah.
So she had to sort of go back to full-time work, and then I was taking care of my kids during the day. I became the dad, and then I was working at night time. So everything just flipped on its head for us. Like, it couldn't have been more of a 180 situation. But it was, as I said, it was humbling. And then as things went down, the market sort of started to slow down because the demand, people started to realise that things weren't as crazy.
Yeah.
And then I reached out to another mate, and he owned bottle shops, so he used to DJ for us at clubs back in the day. And a friend of mine had hit him up, and he said that he has work. So I was like, put my hand up, and I was like, hey, look, I'd love to take an opportunity here. Like, I understand booze. I've worked in the industry forever. I feel like I'm pretty good with people, good talker. Could I have some work? And he was sort of, I remember him being like, oh, dude, it's only like $27 an hour. Like, you cool with that? And I was like, bro, I don't give a fuck. Like, whatever is good now. Yeah. And like, I'm not going to say no to money or hours when I don't know what's going to happen. Because at this point, people have to remember that we had no idea there was going to be any government support. We had no idea there was going to be grants or anything like that. It legitimately at that point, it seemed like we're all by ourselves. And as you said, like, all of our, the rug had been completely ripped out from under our feet. So I started to work there, and then I really enjoyed that. So that went from like, yes, I was working as effectively a factory's labourer, but when I started to work into the booze thing, I'm like, oh, cool, well, I know 35% of this. I understand alcohol. I understand people. I understand how to sell. So I sort of took the lead in that business for my mate, which kind of was probably lucky for him, but I almost started to treat his business like it was my own.
Yeah,
and that kind of fed my appetite for a bit. So I sort of was like, well, what can we fix? Can we group these things together? How do we make your store get more income? And right. Obviously, the pandemic had a big part of that. But me and the guys that came in, we had some pretty good history, like with running our own businesses and stuff. And I'd like to think that we really propped it up. But it got to a point where after like 6 months, because we were there for so long, that we sort of fixed almost a lot of the things. And like it started to get to a point where I was like, it became a job again, where I was just like stacking fridges and doing whatever. And then me and one of my other my partners now in 80 Proof. So he owns clubs too. So he owns clubs in the city, and we'd work nights. So we'd do like Fridays or Thursdays from like 5 to 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And at this point we had curfew, so they'd shut down the everything at 9 o'clock, but you could still do online delivery. So we'd be packing bottles into like boxes and whatnot to send it out. So he would finish at 9, but he would hang around, and we'd sort of be talking about stuff, because funnily enough, I actually worked as a consultant in his venue prior to the COVID happening. So we recreated it. It's a space called Burke Street Courtyard in the city. It's like super successful now, but prior to me coming in, it had some history again, like where people didn't really necessarily want to work in it, and me and him sort of joined forces, and we really developed the brand and renamed it and changed some things, and it became like one of the hottest venues in Melbourne, basically.
So you're just two lads that were in the same situation. You both had successful venues, but obviously, like, you're both working in the bottle shop basically now. You know what I mean? Like, it's a hell of a come down session. I mean, at what point was it you guys started to throw around business ideas and things you could start?
Man, the whole time, because the 4 guys that work with me was like a guy that worked for me 7 years, and he was like a marketing kind of guy who'd done like a lot of social media stuff, a bunch of e-com stuff and whatnot. Then there was my other partner who ran festivals. So he ran like Babylon Festival. He works for Hardware, which is they used to own Stereosonic, which was the biggest festival in Australia. So, and then the other guy I worked with was the owner of, his family owned like 3 or 4 clubs on King Street. So like one of the biggest club families in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So all these guys were fairly heavyweights, and we're all working for $27 an hour stacking fridges. So we basically were always pitching business ideas. Like, that's just what we do when we hang out. Like, these guys, that's sort of
product of your environment again.
Yeah. So that's how we sort of like waste time. Yeah. Like, well, what do you think of this? And we break it down and whatever. So me and George, my partner, we were sitting there one night and we was talking about like when things go back, like how can we make sure that we don't get affected as badly? And originally it was a vodka iced tea. So we were sort of looking at this vodka iced tea and we're like, okay, like maybe we can sell that into the clubs. So when clubs are going again, it's more fruitful for us because we're making more money and more income. But if things close down, we can still make money and pick up sort of the extra abundance in liquor sales, like off-prem, which is like bottle shops and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we started to muck around with them. Like, all right, well, what's the first step? So the first step was to create the product. So we went through the whole process of like create the brand, create the flavors, create the product, create whatever, and got to the point where it was like presentable. And we're like, cool. So then I had worked for another guy again, who was another club owner, and he had shifted from owning clubs about 5 years prior to selling alcohol. So he was doing like parallel importing and distribution, and he was selling like basically booze to clubs. So effectively that's where we wanted to do, but we also wanted to sell off-prem. So I was like, well, let's go catch up with him. So he'd started up this new like franchise souvlaki bar thing, and we're like, we'll go catch up with him and see what his advice is. So we went down to catch up with him, and then he was like, yep, cool, it's not a bad idea, but this is going to fuck you over. I reckon there's a better idea here, but I love the concept of what you're thinking, right? It makes sense. You're going to cushion yourself. It's a great concept in theory. So like, sweet. So then we started to like look through our list of products that we buy, and it was like Corona, vodka cruisers, vodka, cranberry juice, lime, whatever. And we're like, okay, like what's the cranberry juice for? Like, oh, wet pussy shots. So like, wet pussy shots is like, for anyone that doesn't know, which I think that most people would, but it's like the number one sold club in Australia-wide. So any nightclub or bar traditionally will sell wet pussies, and it's basically like one of the things that's always on special. It's like Corona, wet pussy, cruisers. Like it's like a staple for any Aussie.
Just break down what's in a wet pussy shot for the people that don't know.
So effectively, it's alcohol, vodka, peach schnapps, cranberry juice, and just like a touch of lime. So it's nothing. It's not some major concoction. It's pretty easy to make. But
essentially what you did, just so the audience understand, is you both sat there and thought, fucking hell, let's just go through our nightclubs. Let's see what our top seller is.
Yeah.
And that's when this shot came up to you as your best seller, and you thought, well, if we can make that as a premix and sell that in bottle shops all across Australia, that would solve our issue right now, because like obviously all the bottle shops are open but all the clubs are shut.
Yeah, there was actually two parts to it. So the first one was we're looking at it and we're like, okay, if we can make this cheaper than what we make it. So when we make it at a club, we'd pour it into like 20-litre barrels. So we'd pour it up, so you get someone to come in like an hour early, make it, test it, cool. Then they'd put it into like bottles, and then someone would refill those bottles all night and would sell it. So there's a component of labour that we'd have to pay for someone to do it. So we're like, all right, we can get that price of this like cheaper than, or as cheap, or just a little bit more than what people are making it in their clubs. I'm like, we just solve a problem. Like, we just take away some labour. It's super easy. They're just going to grab it out of the bottle. So that was one part of it, where we were like, let's make something that is pretty fucking prehistorically done easier. And then the second, so create a solution for a problem. And the second part was, if club's shut and we're selling this, we can sell it into off-prem. So we basically went from there and went and checked the trademark. And we got super lucky because it had not been done. So this thing has been around for like 20 years. It's a household name, in my opinion. And we checked it, and no one had owned the worldwide trademark for wet pussy. So we went through the process of trademarking it. It took like 6 months. You have to wait for it to go through, and then it got accepted.
So you've got the global trademark for wet pussy.
Yeah, correct.
What, even in America?
Yeah, so we had to do that secondary. So we got the Australian, like Pacific New Zealand one first, and then we had to submit for that, and now we have it worldwide.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal to get that trademark. Do you know what I mean?
I feel like that's probably the craziest part of the whole story. But yeah, there's like, so we got it, and we're like, all right, sweet, let's do this. And again, like when you get thrown into a shit situation, you've got to try to figure out a solution. Sometimes you don't realize how good the solution is going to be for you. But once we sort of made it, we bottled it, and clubs opened in this period. So we were expecting to open like March this year, but like last year. So we sort of, then all of a sudden, old mate, Daddy Dan Andrews, he sort of came out and said, hey, December, you're open. So we're like, fuck, all right. So we put that on the back burner while we went back into our clubs, and we were running stuff every single weekend. We were doing events. Like I think I did 14 events in December myself, all sold out, just putting it out there. But anyway, so I did I did 14 events myself, and plus I ran my club and like the club nights and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we so it went spastic. So we're cool. Like we were sort of on the back burner, and then things seemed to be going back to normal. Like we're like, cool, but we'd already had the trademark. We had product being made, so we knew it was going to land in like sometime mid-March. So even though we weren't really paying attention to it, it landed. We got it. We're like, oh yeah, cool. So we designed all the logos and stuff too. So I own another company, which is I didn't bring up earlier, but it's called Mad Creative. And we do design, websites, video, all this sort of stuff. So it's almost effectively, we're a branding / creative company. So myself and my designer, we created the whole brand IQ, the whole lot. So we did, and my business partner George helped too.
Yeah.
So we put it all together, and then so we got the bottles. Like, oh man, awesome! But at that time, we were sort of like so back immersed in what we were doing that it almost sat in the factory for 2 weeks, and then we were like, all right, we better start moving on this. So it was kind of coming into April. So we sent some stuff out to influencers, and then we noticed that we hadn't even shut up the Shopify yet. So it was all kind of happening super quick. We sort of started selling it into our clubs. So people were selling to our clubs, and everyone was like, oh yeah, cool, sweet. Because they knew the product, they knew we were going to do it. We sort of had these conversations. So
and it made their life easier because it cut out the worker having to make it for the shift, didn't it? So it's actually cheaper for them to stock it, you know.
100%. And it's easier for them to do it. The other part too is it's consistent. So every single time you know the taste. Whereas like when you're batching it, it could taste like cranberry juice, it could taste like lime, it could taste like pure vodka. Like you don't know. Like it's a mix and match. So that kind of we solved that problem too. But just selling to clubs, they were pretty happy about it. But for us, we kind of expected that. So that's where we expected. We expected to sell maybe 4 pallets, a pallet a week, and that was sort of the growth it was.
And how many bottles are on a pallet, Danny?
There's 67 boxes, I think. On our pallets there's 100 boxes, so there's 600 bottles on a pallet. So we thought we'd sell 600
bottles.
Boxes. Yeah, 600 bottles a week or thereabouts, and if we'd had them, we would have been super stoked. So then we were selling to the clubs, and then we decided to send some out to influencers, one being Troy, which I know you've had on the show.
Yeah. Troy Candy.
So we put it out, and we're like, we'll send some to influencers because we had the license to sell booze online. So we'd all gone through that whole process. And we're like, we'll give it a go. And to be honest, I generally was like, I don't reckon people are going to go for this. This is just something you drink in clubs. It's like, it's a club drink. We're going to sell it just to clubs. I can't really see it going to houses. Like I guess I didn't see the vision at that point.
Yeah.
And then, so we were like, sent it to a couple of the guys, influencers, and then we launched it, and we hadn't done the Shopify. So they all kind of started posting it on the Sunday night at like 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And we saw this giant fucking like spike in people coming to the website. So we're like, fuck. So we legit, like within 4 or 5 hours, we built a Shopify store, and then we launched it in the morning, and we sold like $2,500 at that time, which I thought was amazing, in the day, just from the backlog of the influencers posting it. And we're like, oh, what the fuck? Like, how awesome. Like, we did not expect this. So then from there, we're like, well, maybe we try this in like bottle shops. Like, even we obviously had the idea of doing it eventually, but like, well, maybe we'll just give it a go now. So we actually went back to the bottle shop we worked at and was like, hey, would you stock this for us? And the guy, my manager there, Louis, he was like, yeah, no problem. I was like, sweet. So he stocked it there. And then like a week later, he messaged me saying like, hey, can we get more? And I was like, fuck, like he'd have sold more. So after that, we started calling anybody we knew, and we're like, hey, do you have a bottle shop? Can you put some stuff in it? And then the same thing happened. So they were like, within a week, they're like, dude, this sold out. Like, well, can we get some more? And we're like, fuck me. So my business partner, who was the guy that owned the souvlaki joint, he went back and he messaged a dude that he knew that he used to sell liquor through, and was like, hey, would you distribute some of this through your bottle shops? And this guy was like, yeah, no problem. So he took, I don't know what he took, maybe like 40 boxes, and he sent it to a bunch of different bottle shops in like rural, suburban Melbourne. And then this is when it all went crazy. So this dude from Ballarat, which is in the middle of nowhere in Victoria.
Yeah.
He, in this bottle shop called Premix Kings, he posted just a photo of it, and he was like, now stocking wet pussy. And it went fucking viral. Like they did like 75,000 comments on this post. Like it went absolutely, like 2,000 shares, like absolutely went spastic. And we were like, oh my God, like this is crazy. So all of a sudden the online sales went up. We had bottle shops like hitting us up. Like my business partner who deals with all the phone calls, he couldn't even keep up with it because people were calling us from all over Australia, America, New Zealand, because they wanted the product that we had. And then, so from there, we were like, oh my God, this is insane. And then 2 days later, it happened again. So someone from Queensland, I think it's Silverwater, which is like just above Gold Coast. They posted it. Same thing happened. It was like 45,000 comments, all these shares, blah, blah, blah. Then some person just literally took a TikTok of the bottle, didn't even say anything, just like a TikTok. Same thing happened, like 100,000 views, whatever. And it happened like 7 times, like every single day. It was always whirlwind, man. We're just like, what the fuck? Every single day this is happening. So the inboxes were getting filled up. We're getting smashed with phone calls. And we're like, we need to figure out how to like distribute this Australia-wide right now, like while the iron's hot. Yeah. And so lucky for us, and I guess this is something that I keep thinking about. So I'll get people sometimes, man. I'm probably no different to you or any of your guests. Some people think I'm the luckiest human that's ever existed. I disagree with that because I've done these sort of things multiple times. So there's got to be some form of like me knowing what I'm doing.
I think from what I know about you, Danny, I think the true luck for you and the true luck for me and the true luck with a lot of people that I've had in this podcast is the fact that they'll fucking try. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, you when you do a podcast, you go through a dip where you're grinding out content, you're putting out epic content. But it's like one show will get 10,000 downloads, one show will get 3,000 downloads in the first week, and you're like, fucking hell, like, what's going on here then? Like, what's going on? But the truth is, like, you're just compounding the growth. You're just compounding, and then it all comes through like a whirlwind at once, and everyone thinks you're an overnight success or something.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So, like, the two things for me, firstly, the two biggest things I think that attribute to anything I've ever done is network. I will legitimately, man, spend 3 days of my week catching up with dudes, calling guys that I know, speaking, what are you doing, creating conversation, because the only way to get involved with someone's project or something new coming up is
by speaking to them. Yeah.
Although vice versa, if you've got this wicked idea, it's like, okay, well, who do I know that can help me facilitate this? So you just don't take, it's all good to have an idea when you're drinking beers with your mates in the shed, but there's only 1% of people can actually action that. I like to think that I can action it. Regardless if you and I come up with an idea now, if we come up with it, I can be like, oh yeah, I know a publisher that does this, or I know someone that does this, or whatever. It's like, thankfully, because I worked in nightclubs too, it's like I was giving these dudes free piss. So it's almost like everybody owes me a favor, if that makes sense.
Yeah. For sure. It's like if you've got, it's just about making as many connections with as many people as you can. Do you know what I mean? It's like the other day before this podcast, I had Fred Chibester. He owns Finder.com. You know what I mean? He's got $1 billion company, and now I've got someone else in my phone book who's got $1 billion company, and I've added value to him and his audience. And it's like now I've got another billionaire company owner in my phone book to add to the other 9 that I've got. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like now you don't need those contacts all this week, but you want them throughout your life because you can add value to them, they can add value to you. And that's how it all goes on. And it's like, that's why it's so powerful when you said about how you changed your environment back on the podcast as well, because it's like, when you change your environment and took yourself from one situation and put yourself in a totally different situation, it allowed you to open your mind so you could surround yourself with people like this, and you could open your network up and start networking with people. It's that mindset shift. It's that moment of bravery, taking yourself away from your family and everything you've known and putting yourself in another situation. That was the pivotal point in the whole thing, 100%. Because none of this could happen unless you change your environment. Do you know what I mean?
I actually talk about this stuff, and not to diverge off the story that we're sort of telling, but I always talk about like T intersection moments in my life, right?
Yeah.
So I look at them and there's like 4, and I always like tell people, I'm like, think about it. Like, where's a point in your life where you came to a T intersection, and if you took that road, your whole life changed, or you took this road, your whole life changed. So like for me, it was like breaking up with a girlfriend at 20, where she wanted to have kids and get married, and she eventually did, but I didn't. So at that point, it was a T intersection. So I had to decide to go that way or that way, and I chose to go that way. So if I had gone that way, my life would be a completely different story, good or bad. I don't know, but. And it was again like
it's just different. It's just different, isn't it? It's like it's like you can't overthink whether good or bad, but like it's just like you say, it's just a pivotal moment. I mean,
I think reflecting on those things are good too, because then you sit there and go, all right, well, I took that decision. Look what happened. So like when you hit one of those points again, you're like, it becomes easier to make that decision. Yeah, and where you're like, oh, I'm at a T intersection again. Which way am I going to go? Like. And then you can sort of, because you've done it and you've identified that you've done this before, you kind of can make the decisions better. But I guess back off, that one's risk. So for me, I'm just like, I'm ready to have a crack at anything. Like if you and I come up with an idea and we want to sell flavored bubble water, I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. I know a dude who can make it and distribute it. I know this, I know that, rah. Let's have a crack. What's the worst that I can lose? So like I sort of work it out. Here's the worst I can lose, and then I do like a risk analysis almost, like a basic one in my own head, and then I'll give it a crack. 9 people out of 10 don't do that. They're just like, I've got this wicked idea, but I don't want to do that because I get paid $1,200 a week to be a chippy, and that's just easy for me. So I don't want to take that risk because I don't want to lose the income that I've saved because I worked hard for it. Whereas I'm like, if I lose it, well, I'd rather lose the income that I saved knowing that it doesn't work, on taking the risk on it winning than the other way around. Yeah, and like for me, the bigger risk is not having a crack at it. Like that's how I look at it. So
yeah, 100%, Danny. Because like when you get to the end, I've started to. This sounds a bit morbid, but it'll put things in a lot of perspective for a lot of people. I've started to think about the fact that I'm going to die.
I always do.
Right, and I literally. Every day I wake up and I'm like, right, I could die tomorrow. Like, so let's not. I won't put off if I feel like I want to go to the boxing gym, even though I've got work on. I'll be like, well, I'm going there because this might be the last chance I ever get to do 12 rounds. You know what I mean? I might not be able to walk tomorrow. I know it sounds morbid, but it's just like if you live with the perspective in your mind that every day is your last day. Would you really give a fuck about having a stab at this business idea, or changing this group of friends, or offending this person by removing off Instagram even though they're toxic for you, or deleting Tinder because Tinder's not a fucking productive thing for you? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know it sounds so trivial what I'm talking about, but it's like literally put it in perspective. If you do not ultimately go and set yourself out and set your fence out and say, right, this is how I'm turning up, and like death could come to me tomorrow, so I'm just going to just do what the fuck I want to do and just express myself as much as I can in the world and add as much value as I can, then you kind of just pissing in the wind. Like, do you know what I mean?
I actually lost one of my best mates probably about 9 years ago now.
Yeah.
And since that point, I think about it all the time. It's like, fuck, like I'm going to die, which is a fuck thing to take from that. Obviously, everyone's going to die, but I'm like, I want to make sure that my story is like amazing, so that when I die, I always think about like people doing my eulogy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Reading it out at the funeral, yeah.
Yeah, and like even again, not just like business stuff. Like I remember going to one of my best mates' wife's grandpa's funeral, and they were talking about all this stuff he did, like this community things he did, and how he helped these kids. And I was like, fuck, man, like when I die, I want people to talk like that about me. So they're from
like
there,
a celebration of life, rather than the mourning of your passing.
Yeah, and then I'm like, all right, well, what do I want people to talk about when I die? I want them to talk about how I was adventurous, how I was like, took risks, I did all this crazy stuff, that I was like, that my life had meaning because I helped kids or whatever it was. So they became the pinnacle parts of my life where I'm like, well, these are the things I want to focus on. Yeah, and that's where it has gone from now. So like now, obviously, I work on my business stuff. I work with a lot of like underprivileged kids through multiple different programs. I do a bunch of different things, but it's like, I always think about like, well, how do I want to leave this world? But you have to think about dying, because otherwise you're just living life on autopilot. And like, why do you want to live life on autopilot? That's my opinion. Mate, I'm sure some people do want to, but it's like, I don't want to be that guy at the end going, fuck, I should have took that kick, and I should have tried that risk. I should have asked that girl out, whatever it is, and so I don't want to be that guy, and that's how I've lived my life pretty heavily forever, but more so once I realised it.
Yeah, I think just realizing it and just taking this moment. I mean, even guys, if you listen to this point, you're obviously meant to hear this, but it's like, take some time, like write it down on a bit of paper, like are you living life to your full potential right now? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you turning up exactly authentically how you want to be? Like, you got to be honest with yourself. I mean, I'll be totally honest with all of you and just say, like, a few weeks ago I went to this breathwork experience, and when you do breathwork, and it just changes opens up new pathways in your mind and stuff. And I was lying there in this meditation, and like I just started to cry, man, because like there's so many things in life that I wanted to do that I'd not yet done. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, fuck, like it's all starting to realize, that you are only. We don't look. We could be here more than once. I don't know, but let's just say we're here once as this vessel, right?
Yeah.
It's the only duty you have that's going to fulfill you is a purpose bigger than yourself, for a start, and to impact as many people's lives in a positive manner as you can. That's your only goal. Like, there's no other goal. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I have people on you tell your stories and tell your journeys, to give people a bit of value in their life. It's like, just provide value. I don't make no money out of the podcast, but it lights me up. So if it lights me up and it gives value to other people, then I'm serving the world at a higher purpose than I was when I wasn't doing it. And it's just like that. That's what more people have to understand. It's like, what value are you providing to the world? Because all the money and all the business opportunities and all the opportunities that you want come as a byproduct of you adding value to the world.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And there's more to it too, man. It's like, end of the day, it's like, money is one component. And like, even for me, like, I've had a pretty good life and I've done really well and I've sold businesses and created festivals and bought nightclubs and whatever. That's great. But it's like, I remember hitting 30 and I was sort of like, all right, sweet. So obviously I'd grown up, pretty traumatic lifestyle. Like, parents were on drugs and alcohol and whatever. And I remember thinking, I was almost like success was my way to escape that. So I would be like, all right, well, if I'm successful and I buy $1 million house and I do these things and I have the fancy car, I'll be happy then. And I remember when I hit those things, I was like about 30. And I was like, I hit those things and I went into this massive depression. I was like, fuck, I'm fucked. And it took me like 6 months of actually going to see therapists and whatnot to figure out what it was. And the thing was, I thought that I could outrun all the problems I'd ever had in my life with success. Yeah. And that's not true. Yeah. So I'd done all these things and I made all these decisions. I needed to make money because I thought once I got to this $1 million house or whatever it was, that I was going to be happy now. And I wasn't. So I got there, and this happens a lot with people, and I was like, fuck, I am not happy. Yeah. And like, so then I changed, and this is the crazy part about this little story, is that I was like, all right, well, from now on, I'm only going to do things that I care about or I'm interested in. 100%. So if it makes money or not, I don't really give a fuck. And the funny thing about it, man, is I've made more money since I've made that decision than what I did before. So when I was chasing cash, it was like I was constantly grabbing its tail and like just grabbing it, yeah. And like, but once I started doing things for the right reasons and really positively making those decisions for me and what I was interested in, it was when I started to make more leaps and bounds than I ever had. So because
how many times
the decisions I'm making were pure, like they weren't just for cash. Like I wasn't drudging through going, fuck this, like, but I'm like, there's a pot of gold at the rainbow. Like now it's like, even if it doesn't make money, who gives a fuck? Because I love doing it. Yeah.
But there's the one thing I want to drill in on that, Danny, is the fact of how much, just so the audience understands what you're saying there. How much more cash do you say? Is it 3 times more cash you feel like you're making because you're doing what you love? Is it 4 times? What kind of percentage would you put on it?
Man, like for me, I don't think that's an answer. Like I think that the reality is like you're living with your means. Like what's your means? Like what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to buy?
No. What I mean is like if you're saying cash and business is more flowing to you.
Yeah,
would you say it was like, 3-4 times more now because it's flowing rather than
I'd say 4-5 times probably. So it happened almost legit as I made this decision. I was like, cool, I'm going to go back. So back at that point, I had created this company called the Food Truck Carnival, and it was like this giant event. We did like 500,000 people over the summer season. It was massive. It was fucking ripping me to pieces. Like, no, I hated it. I couldn't stand working in it. It was so stressful. It was this giant monster, but I felt like I was stuck in it because I created it.
Yeah.
And I only did it originally because I thought I was going to make heaps of cash out of it. And I sold it, not for as much as I wanted to, but I still made a profit on it. It was all great, whatever. But after that, I didn't want to have this thing with clubs, right? So I actually kind of started to leave clubs and like work corporate. And it was because I almost was following what people I thought expected of me. So people were like, well, why would you go do clubs again? Like that's sort of beneath you now. You run these giant things and festivals and you've got this marketing company and blah, blah, blah. So I sort of started to follow someone else's trajectory or like what they expected of me.
Yes,
and then the reality of it is I started doing clubs because I loved it. I started running events because I loved it. I love music. I love people. I love whatever. I love putting these things on. So then when I came to this point when I sold that business, I was like, well, what am I going to do? And everyone was like, well, you're going to like work on this marketing company, blow it up, do this, whatever. I'm like, I'm not that passionate about it. It's like a means to an end. So I only started that because I wanted to become more creative in my own businesses, yeah, and like and push the envelope there. So I was like, I think I'm going to revert back and I'm going to go back working to music labels and I'm going to go back working in events and creating club nights and doing all this stuff. And I did. And it was just like, I was empowered by it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to be there. I was enjoying creating the brands. I was enjoying creating the music structures. I was enjoying working with artists. And because of that, it's a thing that I've heard before. It's like, if you're a chef and you fucking hate being a chef, you're never going to be as good as a guy who loves being a chef. Because if that guy has to stay back for 5 hours, he's going to, because he fucking loves it. And that's what I was like. I loved it. I wanted to be there. I wanted to do it. How can you beat a guy that wants to be there? I was never counting hours. I wasn't like, yeah, I did 8 hours today. I was like, if I did 40 hours in 48 hours, I didn't care, because I wanted to be doing it. Yeah. And so you can't beat someone who wants to be in that position and wants to work and wants to be, loves what they do. And then now that's just like my principle for anything. So even with the alcohol stuff, it was like, cool, all right, well, as bad as, I know it's not the best thing for you, but I'm like, I'm passionate about alcohol. I always have been. I love whiskeys and wines, and I love booze, and I love branding, and all that's a combination of all those things. So when I had the opportunity to do this, other than the fact I thought that it would help me, I had other opportunities I could have taken too, but I'm like, no, I'm really interested in this. I really want to see how the marketing works, like how to put something like this together, how to distribute across Australia. I think this is a great challenge. It excites me. And on top of that, I really like alcohol. So it kind of made sense. So when you start to make those decisions purely and it's for the right reasons, and a lot of people I speak to have the same sort of story as me, it always is the same case. Like they always start to win because, as I said, you can't beat someone who wants to work.
100%, mate. And everything's started to flow better since I started to put my voice around things and started to do this and do it for the right reasons. You know what I mean? It's not just about monetizing stuff.
Yeah.
Other stuff will monetize on the back of it anyway. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. It's like a byproduct, man. It's a byproduct of. And so even for me, it's like, even if I didn't make money off those things, like that's the story that people like to hear. They're like, oh, what, you fucking killed it, you made all this cash. But that's actually not the motivator for me. So as soon as my motivation stopped being about money, it's funny because that's when the money starts to flow. I mean,
it's crazy, but it works that way.
I've had offers of sponsorship for this podcast with a big clothing brand, turned it down. With a couple of financial companies, turned it down because they're not right for me. They're not in alignment. Because with the clothing brand, it's like with the deal that they were offering me to support this podcast, I'm like, if that's the deal that you offer me, you don't see the vision of where I'm taking the podcast, so we're not aligned. And it's like, if you don't. That just shows a lack of belief in me and what I'm building here. And it's way bigger than that. Do you know what I mean? Forget the monetary value. It's way bigger than what you think it is in that terminology. It's like, you just let that go. Like that's not right. You know what I mean? That's not the game. It's like, if you look at this, there's podcasts that rank above this podcast in Australia, Danny, that don't put as much into the production of the clips as we do, that don't do certain things. And it's like, I know that we'll out hustle them in the long term anyway. Like, do you know what I'm saying? So I don't have to worry about the short term fucking clip $5,000 here, clip $1,000 here, clip $3,000 here. I don't have to worry about all that shit, because that shit's just nonsensical, because in the future it all comes back in abundance, but it just all come at once. Do you know what I mean?
It also makes things easy. Like once you have values within yourself or whatever you're doing or whatever. I have this thing where I call it brand IQ.
Yeah.
So anything that I create, I'm like, cool, what's the brand IQ? I know it sounds lame, but I'm just like, it's whatever it is. Even if it's a bar, it's like the bar I'm sitting in right now. It's like, I'm like, all right, well, I want it to be for older people to enjoy good cocktails, blah, blah, blah. Once I understand like what it's for and what the IQ of that business is, everything becomes easy. So if someone comes along and goes, oh, we're going to give you 10 grand to stock fucking James Bogue, which is a beer that I hate, I'm going to say no, like regardless of the money or no, because I'm going to be like, no, because it doesn't fit my brand value of this thing I've created.
Yeah, I agree.
Then those decisions make sense. But then I continue to grow and grow and grow. And then all of a sudden a brand that does align with it, because I've stuck true to what I believe in, will come and it will happen. And I'll be like, cool, sweet, that's exactly what I wanted. And it's because you attract what you're creating. You attract what you want by creating something that you believe in.
It's about being authentic to you and what you do. You know what I mean? Like it's like I just know what I want in life. I know what I want from this podcast. I know what value I want the audience to take from it. The audience know that when I put out a podcast, it's gonna bang. It's gonna hit their ears at the right time. And I'm not willing to compromise that for fucking this little bit of cash over here, just
1,000,000%, man.
just to promote some bullshit I don't like. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I did this thing on Instagram, right? I shared this peanut butter smoothie that I had at this cafe on Hedges. I was telling you before the podcast. Yeah, right. And then a few of the girls went out and got it, and they tagged me in it and they shared me in it. And then I'm just like, before I got on this podcast, I just put out a message saying, it'd be really good, guys, if you could go down to Cafe on Hedges and sell them out of peanut butter, blah, 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 blah. Because I like it. I don't get nothing from it. I don't give a fuck about it. I don't want no money from them. And they're messaging me, it's like, oh, we'll send you. We sold like 10 of these this morning already, like, since you posted this. I'm like, we're going to give you a free one. I'm like, I don't want your fucking free smoothie, man. I just want you to do good business because you were good to me. You were kind to me when I came into your venue. You've got a great product. I don't want no fucking free shit. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's just like, again, they added value to my life. The least I can do is add value to theirs. Same, similar to what you're explaining with what you're doing in your journey. I just want to pivot back to because obviously it's such a good story within the wet pussy model, is the fact that, like, you took this club drink, you bottled it, you got it on pallets, you started selling it into major brands. I think you got it into like Thirsty Camel as well, didn't you? And places like
a few more than that. So going back, we really diverted off that. But where I was going with that originally was that because I'd met all these people and we'd worked so long for over 10 years, it's almost like the success of this product wasn't just because it was successful. Like, if that makes sense. Obviously, it blew up and that's awesome. But it was how we managed it. And that was all the 15 years of experience I'd had prior to that came to that point.
Yes.
And when things blew up, I was like, cool, I know how to harness this. I've worked in social media, I understand marketing, I understand hype.
You had all the contacts.
I had all the contacts. So I was like, cool, this is what we're going to do. We're going to capture that. We're going to make sure that's bigger. We're going to read what they're saying. Then we're going to promote to those people who are in those comments with the things that they're talking about, which is nostalgic, or they're talking about missing clubs or whatever. So let's really harness that and create more demand. And okay, this thing's kicked off in TikTok. Let's go find some TikTok guys. This is the vision we want, blah, 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 blah.
I love the fact, I just want to drill in on this. Sorry, Danny, but I just want to drill in on this. The fact that you went into the comments and listened to what the customers were saying and the feelings that they were feeling. And then you put the creative around those feelings, and then you use that creative to sell the product. Yeah, and it's like, the reason I'm drilling into that is because that's some powerful shit. It's because it's like you're saying you're going into the comments, you're listening to what people are saying, you're listening, and then you're creating the brand value around the brand that the people request because they're talking about it. And that is so powerful, man. It's
actually, yeah. So we did that, and we were sort of following them. So almost like we got, not a cheat code, because again, as I said, it's 15 years of experience to be able to understand, read that, and then make it turn into something. But then my other business partner, again, 20 years of experience. He knew how to distribute booze and do all this sort of stuff. And then a friend of mine had owned this company called Tipple, which is like, it's like Uber Eats for alcohol in Melbourne. It's the #1 liquor delivery company.
Yeah.
But I knew him, and then he kind of respected me because we all kind of followed businessmen. And then, so I connected with him and I was like, can you help us grow our business? So it was like everything that had ever happened in the last 15 years came to this point. Every relationship that I made with my partners, every relationship that we created with the marketing team, from the designer to the video guys, like it all bubbled up to this point, if that makes sense. So when we were able to like really blow the product up, because most people would be like, fuck, we got this giant like bubble about to explode, like this volcano. But we were able to put the dots together and distribute across Australia within like a month, if that makes sense. Which is
mate,
it could take people years.
Yeah, it could take people years, and then obviously you're probably going to expand abroad. But just to give people a little bit of dollar terms, right? You went from 0 to what in how long?
So effectively, we sold the first month we sold 4 pallets. Then the 2 weeks after that, we sold 8. Then there was 16 by the end of the month. The next month was, I think, 20. And then the month after that, we sold 55 pallets. So we've been around for 6 months now, and we're just shy of 2 mil rev. We've sold well over 100 bottles across Australia.
0 to 2 mil.
Yeah,
in 6 months.
So, and then that's from the first month wasn't even comparative. So realistically, you could say it's from 4 months. But
that is mad, man. 0 to 2 mil.
It's pretty crazy. But yeah. So but again, like it was the accumulation of every single experience we'd ever had, myself and my partners. So my partners was George, the guy that owns clubs on King Street, his family does. My ex-boss, Jess, who had ran alcohol companies and nightclubs, and then a partner we brought on to help us scale. He done a lot of stuff for celebrations and whatnot. So we're in a lot of celebrations, Thirsty Camels, Bottle Marts, a lot of it, like independent chains.
Yeah, and you just bringing people on with the contacts to get you into like 60, 70 stores, and then giving them a bit of equity for the fact that they can just plug you directly into a sales route.
For sure. Well, for us, we're like, okay, cool. Where's our weakness? So like we go boom, boom, boom. How do we continue to grow? Where's our weaknesses? We don't have consistent relationships with these independent chains. Hey, I know a guy that does. He works for Tipple. They're on like a on-demand alcohol service. Let's chat to him. He's like, yeah, cool. I absolutely love this brand. I can scale you A, B, and C. We're like, you're a great fit to our business. Boom, we keep going. And it's like, as I said to you when I spoke to you last week, we just brought on another partner now. So he's like an international Malaysian businessman. Yeah. And they sort of focus on like IPOing businesses and stuff, but he's kind of came in to help us deal with the international expansion of our business and also the growth of our own business. So as I said, we bought another alcohol product recently. We acquired a company called Bougie, which is also a crazy story because that was the number one sold product in the bottle shop that I worked in. So swings and merry-go-round.
How did you get presented with the opportunity to buy Bougie as a brand?
So we knew the guys who when we were working in the bottle shop, we knew the guys that owned it. They were like, we were kind of in detail with them because we were like the number one selling bottle shop of that product. And I guess it's because we loved the label, the marketing was awesome. So we were constantly pushing it, and there was like a bit of invested interest. The partner was related to the guy. So then when we had that opportunity, so we kind of blew it up and scaled. We were like, well, we're looking at things to move forward. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff, which I'll go into afterwards, where we're growing some really kind of cool and exciting stuff. But we were like, all right, well, this really fits with our values, like of our brand 80 Proof. So we're like, it's cutting edge. It's solving a problem again. So obviously Wet Pussy is like, we're bringing the club back home. So we're kind of creating pre-drinks and sort of encouraging that with this wine. The whole idea of this wine was basically it's good wine for people without the time. So it was like kind of a millennial-based wine that was it was bougie without the bullshit was the whole catchphrase. So the idea was it's like, hey, I know you don't really understand wine. You probably don't have the time to learn because you're a fucking like corporate whatever. We've got these guys who are wine lovers and wine experts. They've bottled the best wine that they've found and they've done all the hard work for you. So you can grab this with like complete trust that you're going to deliver a good bottle to when you go out for dinner or whatever. So we were like, all right, well, a lot of these things align with our values. And we love the brand. So we were just like sort of talk to them and had a conversation, and he had experience to be able to help us grow too. So we're like, oh, well, let's acquire this brand and let's bring them on to help us build their brand, but also to help us engage and build our other brand, if that makes sense.
So when you did a deal to buy this brand, did you buy the brand for cash and take over the brand, or did you cut them into the equity of your previous brand?
It was equity and cash.
Equity and cash, I like it. So you just, because that's a great way of doing it. Because one thing I know from big brands is the fact that when you start putting these alcohol brands together and packaging them together and start building, 80% proof as a holding company, and then you got all these brands underneath them, you can flip them for a massive multiple to a Delagio or someone like that down the track. I mean, you're at 2 mil. You've gone 0 to 2 mil on just a Wet Pussy brand alone. Now you've rolled in a wine brand. I presume you're going to roll in other brands along the track and apparel and all this kind of stuff.
Of course, we've got 3 flavors coming out. Before Christmas, so that'll be a part of the Wet Pussy brand. So I can say the names. There's like one's called Sourpuss, one's called Porn Star, but they're all sort of like, and then the other one's called Hot Kitty. So they're all different kind of plays on the traditional club shop, but they're different flavor variations. So we're going to expand that brand. Obviously, the wine that comes will be bottled in 5 days. So we'll sort of start to sell that. And then we're working with a lot of, because like obviously we work in the entertainment. We've worked with a lot of like big DJs, celebrities, whatever. So we've got some really cool stuff coming up with collaborations with people that we've worked with, or also like other promoters and stuff. So we've been able to facilitate something that they've dreamed with, and we've become the distributor and the producer of their product. And then they can kind of become the face and the marketing arm of it, if that makes sense.
So are you talking about like when people put out products like Fisher puts out Fizz and all that kind of stuff, hard Fizz and stuff like that?
Yeah,
like that kind of
yes.
That kind of thing for people like him.
Yeah, but like probably we're talking to a lot of like artist managements, festival companies, all different stuff like that. So we've got some really cool, exciting brands on the go. None of them have completely finalised yet, but there's some cool stuff coming out for next year. But other than that, for us, it's like, as you said, like we're going to continue to create brands. Some of the brands we'll own ourselves. We'll do the marketing. It'll be our brand. Then some of the brands will distribute and produce. But the big thing, man, for us is like, because everything blew up so quickly and we really knew how to handle it and sort of lasso it, we were able to go Australia-wide very, very quickly. So for us, when it came to the bougie thing, we were like, okay, cool. Well, we know they're making X amount of money a year at the moment. Our distribution network is times 10 what theirs was. So we know that if we drop it in, if it gets picked up by times 5 of it, we're going to be able to times 5 that profit. So that's where we are. It's like we're in a position that if something does align with what we're doing and it makes sense, we're able to grow it exponentially really quickly. Yeah. And all these things sound crazy because we've only been around 5 months, but this is the reality of the situation we are in. So it's insane.
But it's 15 years of hard work from all these different avenues and all these different people, and you're just bringing it all together and you're packaging it and you've done it differently, and you've got some phenomenal trademarks going. Like it's not an overnight success, but I can see us when we get the chance, we're going to sit down on a sofa and do a podcast either in Melbourne or Gold Coast or wherever we end up. But by that point, we're going to be talking about a 10, 20, $30 million business, and then in the years to come, when we come back to it in a couple of years, we could be talking a sellout of 200 mil to a big player in the alcohol space. Because that's where this is going.
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. Like end of the day, like we're creating our market with the wet pussy stuff doesn't exist. So we're almost trying to be the cruiser of like pre-shots or pre-drinks, and it's like once we create that, someone's got to wear that hurt. So someone was going to buy something else and they bought our product instead. So we're almost in a disruptive business concept where we are trying to do that. Like the idea is that if we can sell as much product and as much volume and as much leaderage as we possibly can, someone's going to have to notice what we're doing because they're going to start to see their own sales dwindling. And then for us, we look at it as like a large scale thing where it's like, all right, well, we can use all these relationships, use all these club connections, use all these entertainment / artists that relationships we've built for the last 15 years to create enough annoyance to a big brand. Like that's the major win for us. If that makes sense.
if you look at some of the big firms, I can't remember the name of the firm, but there's a big firm in the Gold Coast that sold out its brand. Was it Bolter? Was it Bolter?
Yeah, man. Stone and Wood just did for 550 million.
Yeah, 550 million. I think Mick Fanning was involved in it. I'd love to get him on.
Yeah, CUB bought. I think it was like 150 or something like that. But yeah, they sold.
I'd love to get Mick on the podcast sometime. So maybe if you know him.
One of the big things with booze, which is awesome, is that it stays forever. So it's like, for argument's sake, like when you're growing up, you drink Jaeger. People still drink Jaeger. Yeah, and like yes, it maybe is not as popular, but it's like it becomes a part of like people.
It's iconic. It's iconic and nostalgic. I mean, if kids are drinking this, not kids, but like if younger people are drinking this now, they'll be having it at parties later on down the track. You've got Wet Pussy as a brand.
Exactly. So like our vision for it is like that. If it's your 21st, you've got to have your cruisers, your beer, your champagne, your wine, and your shooters. Yeah, like that's our brand. Like that's how we vision ourselves in the market. And then again, man, it's like if it's your 30th, you're still going to do it because it reminded you of good times. So it's like when you're 40, you're still going to do it because it's like all the essentials, which is like beer, wine, spirit, shooters. Yeah, and like if you're going to have a party, so we want to fit in that line where we become a part of like that. Where anytime that you're going to have a celebration, you want to make sure that you've got our products with you. Yeah, and that's how we kind of look at ourselves like long term. It's like those things, again, going back to brand values, other than marketing, solving a problem, sort of being on trend with what we're trying to achieve. It's that we want to be those core products that become pivotal parts in your life or your experience or development. But it's like, man, like bourbon drinkers, like people who are bourbon drinkers, they'll tell you 10 times they're bourbon drinkers. They love telling you they're bourbon drinkers. Yeah, and so that's the thing with the alcohol. It's like people, there's a brand alignment, or again, like Crownies, which I don't know if you know what they are. Do you know what Crownies are?
Nah, not a clue.
It's just like shit beer. It's like Foster's, but like more expensive.
Right.
So growing up as an Australian, like most people who listen to this podcast, they know what it was. But it was like your dad only cracked them out when it was Christmas or it was like someone's birthday. Yeah. So there's like pivotal parts of alcohol, which is celebration, and we want to become that for.
Yeah. You want to become the 18th party gift, the 20th party,
the 21st, and then the 30th because you did drink it back then.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and like nostalgic now. So that's what we want to be and where we want to sit.
Me personally, I can't see how, with the amount of noise that's going to be made in this space by you in the next 12 months, I can't see how a big one doesn't come in and try and just take you out by buying you and acquiring you, because it's quicker to acquire you, because the trademarks you've got. The most valuable thing is not just the execution on what you've done, but it's like you've got the trademarks to a phenomenal brand name, and and the equity within that name. And it's not like no one else can go and use that name now. Do you know what I mean?
Even for us, man, like, so some of the majors have an issue with the name. Obviously, the name's Pussy, so it's controversial, right? So we're arguably the kind of situation we went with them is that this is cultural, like this has been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
And some of them were like, yeah, I understand that. But so that's where we focused on not just the name, we focused on the color. So like the color, we were so specific on, and like we put it on everything. It's like make sure that it's like a real focal point. And like the cat, we have this cat symbol. So that cat symbol has become such a focal point, because the idea for us is that if you see that cat or you see that color, you want to think of us. Yeah. And so we want to get to a point where our branding, our color and our logo is just as influential or as that name. So then we can transfer into it. So if a major does go, look, that doesn't work for us, we're like, well, we can just put the logo on it. It doesn't need to have the name. Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same with what Troy Candy's done with the snorkel. It's like, was there snorkels that went into alcohol bottles before Troy Candy? Yes. Is there copies of Troy Candy snorkels? Absolutely. Everywhere in China's pushing them out. People are selling them. But people want a snorkel with the Troy Candy brand on it, the blinged up Troy Candy snorkel. Because
having a Troy Candy lifestyle, having a Troy Candy snorkel is a lifestyle.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the same as us. It's like we want to be a lifestyle product in the sense that if you're going away with friends and you're going to celebrate, it's like this is what you need to have, because this is a pinnacle part of that celebration. So, mate, and again, man, we talked about how you were saying how I looked at the comments in the start, like whatever. It's like for us, it's like a brand isn't just like, oh, this looks good, let's push it out. Like a brand is everything. Like a brand is like
it's a feeling. It's a feeling.
Yeah, it's emotional. A brand has to be emotional. And the thing is, again, going back to that whole I've learned over 16 years is like when I do club nights, man, like I've had really successful club nights. Some of the most successful club nights across the board. Not once, 5 times, yeah. And like some of these things have been iconic club nights in Melbourne that have developed careers that have gone on to be worldwide, all kinds of stuff, right? The thing is that I've always done and why I've been so successful in that space was that I was able to put myself in the people who wanted to go their shoes. So I was like, how do I create something?
I love that.
How do I create something that these people want to see? So like I'm 34 now and I've been doing this since I was 19 and people would be like, you're gonna age out of it. And I'm like, well, no, because I understand the fundamentals that these kids, they like, for argument's sake, leopard print. They like this type of music. They like house music. They like whatever it is. So I'm able to adapt to be like, well, if I was their age, and I was once, and this is what I listen to, and this is the sort of the trends and whatever. It's like, what would I want to be submerged in? What would I want to experience? And it's like, if I then create that product for them, it works every single time. So it's got to be everything. It's got to be the name, the feeling, the identity. Like there's so much more to it than just being like, cool, this is a cool name, let's see if it works.
It's not only listening though, it's asking. It's you're not only listening and thinking about what you think you want, but when you find out what you think they want, you go and ask, and then that's how and then as soon as you get enough response to say yeah, that's good, then you go and try it. The issue with a lot of people is not just the not trying. It's like there's a lack of freedom of thought for a start to think bigger than where they're at the moment. Then there's the lack of application to ask a bigger question of the people that they've got access to, and then there's the application of putting that thing into place when you've got all those 3 things in place anyway.
There's also people don't want to hear the answer. So it's like if I think that this is the best thing for this audience, and then someone tells me no, I don't think it is, then they're like, well, fuck you. Like I'm
because they've wrapped their ego in it.
100, and that's like we see, especially in the promotion industry, it's like you get these guys that are really, really good, they're 21, they really understand that market because they are that market. But when they're 25, they can't pivot out of it. Yeah. It's like at one point I was doing like psytrance, techno, house, commercial music, dance music, R&B, Aussie hip hop shows all the time. And people are like, how are you able to do that? And I'm like, well, because I understand the market of these guys. So I'd hang out with them, or I'd watch all their cultural stuff. Because at the end of the day, man, like, you wear Nike because you believe in what Nike believes in. Like, it's a culture. You wear, whatever you do, every single thing you do, you buy. You buy Red Bull because you believe in Red Bull as a culture. So it's like all these products you grab actually build your personality without you knowing it. So if you can understand that, and then you can turn whatever your product is, regardless if it's fucking gum, tampons, or alcohol, you can understand the culture or how to get into that culture and make yourself a predominant part of that person. It's like you'll succeed every single day of the week, no doubt about it.
I'll give you an example of exactly what you're talking about, right? When I heard Ronaldo was going to Manchester City, I got physically upset, right? Because I grew up in the era of the 1999 Man United team with Beckham, Sheringham, Solskjaer, Scholes, Giggsy, Peter Schmeichel, Jaap Stam, Roy Keane, Nicky Butt, all that stuff, right? So I had that as a kid, right? And then Ronaldo came along, and Ferguson created this whole team around this young, fucking hungry Portuguese player, and I watched him at Old Trafford twice, and I saw him at Peterborough United twice, and I passed one time. The ball went out for a throw-in, and I passed Ronaldo the ball, right? And I was fucking 2 meters away from Ronaldo. Powerful moment in my young life, right? And when it physically made me feel ill when I thought of him wearing a Man City shirt, right? And then I heard he's going to Man United. Instantly, because I'd heard he's going to Man United, and when I saw him in your Man United shirt, even though I don't wear fucking football shirts, I want to buy a Man United Ronaldo shirt because of the feeling that brand and that had to me in my childhood, and that is branding. That is branding because
emotion. Like they've evoked emotion in you, and then now you want to be a part of it.
100%. Mate, I used to see how Man United were doing maybe once a month, you know. Mate, I'm checking, like last night they took a last minute goal in the Champions League and they got turned over, and I watched all the highlights of Ronaldo's first 2 goals on his debut, and that's just because those moments and that time brings such a feeling within inside myself that I want to be invested in that again. I want to feel that again because I know how much that feels, and that is the essence of what branding is, and that's what you're going to create with Wet Pussy and with your other brands, and you wrapping it around a feeling. And then even if other brands copy it but can't use the name, but they use a different name, it won't have the same feeling, because when Tracy went out at 18 years old into fucking centre of Melbourne and got 3 Wet Pussy shots, that's you can't. You've got Wet Pussy as a brand. You can't. Yeah. And you own the club that she consumed it in. It's like it's a no-brainer, mate. It's fucking gold. It's fucking gold, 100%. Man. It's gold branding. Man,
like I've always like read a lot, and like one of the biggest things is always like, if you can separate yourself from the situation and look from the outside in, then you won't make mistakes and decisions on your ego. So that's where I've always felt like that's been a skill set for me, is like, okay, pulling myself out and being like, how do I create exactly what you just explained? How do I make Tracy at 18 go at 30? Oh, fuck yeah, I used to drink them. Like, I need to taste that again. As soon as she has that sip of that alcohol, she's like, that takes me straight back to that club I used to go to when I was 19. Yeah, and like, so, and that's, I attribute that exact same thought process and everything I've ever done, from events I've done, the barbecue events, to food truck carnivals, to fucking nightclub nights, like whatever I've ever done. I'm like, how do I evoke this motion or memory to make sure that this becomes something that continues on to that person's psyche? Yeah,
100%, mate. I mean, a lot of people won't be expecting me, of all people, to do the podcast with you on alcohol and alcohol brands, because I don't drink alcohol. I've never drunk it, right? Never even tried alcohol, right? Crazy. So it's crazy for me to do this podcast in some people's minds, but it's not, because I understand the psychology of growing up in society where people drink alcohol. I understand the branding play that you've played. I love the fact that you've got this trademark. I see this business as a phenomenal business that can flip into a massive multiple with a big alcohol company. What you're doing, I just see such a big. Not only that, I think you've done a phenomenal thing, but like, I just see that I see all these things, and there's so many learnings. If people don't understand how many learnings there are in this podcast to this point, and how many things you've gone from you're taking yourself from one environment to a better environment. You've bettered yourself. You've wasted shitloads of money. You've saved it. You've invested. You've put everything on the line. You've flipped it out, and then over a culmination of years, 15 fucking years, I might say, of you making constant mistakes, but also understanding that the value is in your network. You've put together. You didn't even realise you were doing it at the time. You probably had a little bit of a subconscious thing, but you're putting together all these pieces on this chessboard to be able to pull together into a brand that's going to absolutely kill it across Australia, mate. It's phenomenal, man. It's phenomenal.
It's funny, man. Like, one thing I reckon you really appreciate and love, but I always say to people, so I'd do an event and I'd lose 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh, fuck. And then people are like, are you shattered? I'm like, you spend more than that to go to uni. So I'd always look at it like a loss rather than looking at a loss like money lost. I'd be like, well, I paid to learn that lesson. So like, it's almost 100%. An investment in my future. So I'd be like, lost 5 grand. Well, I lost 5 grand, but I made a mistake here, and here that I'm not going to make again. So
yes.
It's like, I look at those losses as a financial investment into my self-development to become a better business person.
100%.
And then most people look at that and they're like, I failed. My ego's damaged. I'm never going to do a business again. I put someone out, whereas I'm like, well, you would spend that on a self-help course, or you would spend that on a university or a TAFE course. So like, why not spend that on yourself to make those mistakes?
Mate, right. It's like, there's plenty of courses that teach you how to build things, right? And I've had a culmination the last few years thinking to myself, why would I build that when I can buy someone who's already built it, but it just needs to be lightened up. It's like I've got my podcast YouTube channel, and I thought the other day, fuck, I've got this YouTube channel. It took me ages to get to like 1,000 subscribers, and then on from that. It took me fucking ages. It takes you a long time to build things. But I thought to myself, I wonder if there's any place that sells YouTube channels or does this or does that. And I just looked around and I thought, fuck me, you can buy a YouTube channel that does motivational content that's been fucking going since going from 2013. You can buy it. So I'm thinking to myself, fuck, I can literally just buy audiences and buy ears, obviously, and then put in place a video creator and this, that, and the other, and just give them free license, and then I can monetize it a certain way, and I can put affiliate links in there, and it's just like my mindset's opened so much since I come to Australia in the last 7 years in the development that I've had. It's like I'm opened up. There's so many different ways that you can make money if you just think 100%. Outside the box,
especially in Australia,
mate. Because when the sun's out, you feel better. You have better fucking ideas.
Yeah,
100%, mate. You have better ideas when the sun's out. If I'm telling you now, mate, if you'd been locked down for 250 days in the grey, cold, and wet in England, it's a different conversation. You probably wouldn't have thought about this wet pussy shot. You'd have been thinking, "Fucking hell, life's over, mate."
Yeah.
It makes a huge. The environment is the killer. We're so lucky here. We're so lucky with everything.
There's also a lot of opportunity because we're a young country, and so like we don't have old money and stuff. So it's like you can be me. You can be the guy who grew up with a family that was living like sort of broken home and sharing bedrooms with your brother, like with no carpet, and then become a guy that can continue to succeed. Whereas like in other countries, I don't think it's as easy as that. Whereas here, it's like even if you don't want to be that, you can legit come to Australia, work fucking hard as a tradie, as a chippy for 4 years and buy your first home and sort of start to work your way in that rank. So it's like hard work in Australia and good ideas really, really get paid forward. Like you're able to, it's a really great place for growth. And we don't have these giant multi-million-dollar people who have been around for 1,000 years. It's like everyone's new, really. Like we're a 200-year-old country, and so it literally is like the land of opportunity, really.
Mate, it is, and it's like the days of thinking you have to go to America it's like yeah, you can go there and you can do bits, but you can do bits anywhere you are. Even if you're in England, if you listen to this, even if you're in America, even if you're in Sweden listening to this, like you can just create and carve opportunities out anywhere you so choose. But the only thing you might have to change is the people you're surrounded with.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you're thinking that you can't do this or there's things that you can't do, that tells me straight away that you need to cut a few people out your life and chop in a few new ones. Go and put yourself in the position that where you feel fucking hell, like I don't like, out of your comfort zone to meet these new people, to go and make these new connections. It's like,
well, there's a famous saying, man. It's like your net worth is your network. Yeah, and like And that's 100% true. Like the more that I met other dudes like me and entrepreneurial guys, it's like everything becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. And I look back at like when I was 19 or 20, had these crazy awesome ideas and I never did anything with it. And now it's like there's not an idea in my head that I couldn't somehow connect the pieces together and actually get up and going if I wanted to. It's up to me if I want to. But it's because
tell the audience about when you contacted me.
So I was basically had a few beers and I was just like I was listening to your podcast during the day and then I like kind of messaged you and I was like, hey mate, like love your content, blah blah blah. Like I feel like I've got a pretty cool story to tell you. Like let's chat. And then I woke up in the morning and went to unsend it. But Frankie had already seen it before I did it.
Yeah, because it's those kind of moments, mate, that can change the course. It's like I'd seen it. I thought, here's a guy who listens to my podcast. He's doing good things. He's in the alcohol space. He's in the nightclub space. Like there's a good chance you're not going to see me in a fucking nightclub because I don't go to them, right? There's a good chance you're not going to see me drinking alcohol because I've never fucking drank it, right? But just because I don't do something doesn't mean I don't see the value in the content and the learnings from that, and I'm not open-minded enough to understand what you're trying to articulate. And mate, I fucking love this story. I mean, I'm even to the point where I'm not going to try it, but I'm like thinking to myself, fuck, honestly, I hope this is one of the most hyped podcasts for your brand that you ever do, but
yeah.
I ain't never going to try the product, but I can just see the kind of how the feeling it would create in certain people. But the reason
I think a lot of the things though I've said is like it shouldn't just be about just alcohol. Yeah. Like you can use this in bottled water, condoms, jelly,
branding,
whatever you can think of. Yeah. So I think for me, it's like my story is actually a story of marketing, not alcohol per se. Yeah. And yes, it's a line and run along with me the whole time, but there's more to it than just the actual product that's in there, which is insane to say, but it's true. Like there's so much more in any product. Is the packaging is almost as important, if not more important, than what's actually inside it.
But 100%. And let's just put it in another context, right? There's two things there's something I've learned from this, and I think there's something Danny's learned from this. Danny's learned at the end of the day, you ask, don't go and send the message. If you want to speak to someone who want to do something, just fucking put it out there into the aura, and it will happen if it's meant to happen. Next thing you know, me and Danny are on the phone. We're connected. We're having banter on the phone. We're doing a podcast. It's the same thing with me. I've not gone and just dismissed it because it's an alcohol brand. My mind's open. I'm open to doing these, to doing and learning these things, and I want to meet more entrepreneurs like Danny that are just hustled, from $0 to $2 million inside 4 months.
The biggest thing, man, is if the biggest mistakes lost are the ones you never asked for. 100%. So it's like the reality of it is like if you're too afraid to ask somebody to catch up and talk like what we did, or you're too afraid just to hit someone up and be like, hey, can you give me some advice on this? Or you're too afraid to ask somebody, whatever it is. It's like they're the biggest opportunities missed. Like there's more risk in not asking that than there is in asking, if that makes sense. Because you're going to get more reward out of actually taking the plunge and saying, hey, like let's link up, let's have a chat, let me tell you my story, or let me pick your brain about something you've done before. And most people, man, in these situations, and you know it yourself, it's like no matter who you talk to, how successful they are, 9 times out of 10, unless they're a fucking asshole, they're going to go, yeah, cool, let's chat. And I get people hit me up on Insta all the time. They're like, hey man, with the music stuff, I've started doing music. I really want to talk to you. I don't think you'll reply to this. I'm like, why would I not? I'm sitting on my couch. Of course I'm going to fucking reply to you. That's the thing, that blockade you put in your own head. Yeah. And then some of those dudes we end up signing, and they've got millions of plays now. So these are things that, as I said, the biggest mistake you can make is not asking a question.
Mate, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's just guys, you got to be open to asking the questions. At the end of the day, right? I've just made a contact here, and when I'm in the future, in 12 months' time, when I feel like I've got even bigger listenership and this, that, and the other, I'm going to be saying to Danny, Danny, how do I go about setting up a tour or a podcast night in a venue and all this stuff, because I won't know the answers, but Danny will know the answers, and he'll give me the answers, and he'll probably be able to help me do it because of a byproduct of I'm helping him, he's helping me. Do you know what I'm saying? That's how the world goes round. And if you're both not open-minded enough for Danny to message and me to answer, because once you remove all the ego and all that, you can think yourself out of something, is what I'm trying to say. You can think yourself out of something.
And I'm guilty of it too. I think everybody is, but like the mistake is that don't back yourself in. Back
yourself in. But just give people a brief overview of this music company and what you're doing in that space.
I've always worked in music, so I've always worked with labels. So I used to work with Eric Powell and Carl Cox's label, Bush Records. So when I first started, when I was younger, so at A&R. So A&R is basically what I do is I find artists, young guys, and I'll sign them to bigger labels. I did that for a while, then I did my own label. It was called Say What Records. We did really well, but unfortunately we closed down because myself and the partners had different visions and we sort of couldn't agree, so we ended up collapsing it. I stopped for 5 years. So I didn't do it for 5 years.
Yeah.
And then when I had hit that point that I spoke about earlier, that T intersection, I was like, well, I want to continue to do this. So now I A&R for a label called Teamwork Records, and I own two of my own labels, so Brotherhood Records and Seven Reason Records. So I do that too, and we work with some really big artists. So Mars Wolf, he has one of the #1 songs in the world. He works under our label. Like Joel Fletcher, Melbourne, who's another really good emerging artist. It's sort of starting to hit those millions now. So we've got a really great caliber of artists. But for me, I'm just constantly, so the other way around is like, I'm looking for people to listen to. Like, so when someone hits me up, they've just skipped one jump. Like, I don't have to find them. They've put it forward to me, and I'll watch them. And another thing I'll do a lot is I'll help develop them. So I'll be like, cool, man, like I really think this is good, but I can tell you recorded this in your garage. This is probably a bit weak. Like, send me your next song. Keep going. And then it's like, as I see them coming up, I'm like, well, it's in my best interest to introduce you to the label. I think you're almost there. Let's polish you from 80 to 100%. Yeah, and like, how can I do that? We'll put you in contact with this guy. Maybe he can make your beats and stuff like that. So these people exist, but effectively I'm a scout for labels, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I like it. And it's just everything that you're talking about and everything you're aligning with is all to do with, okay, I'm passionate about music. I'm passionate about nightlife. I'm passionate about people having experiences. So I'll have an alcohol brand, I'll have a nightclub, and I'll do the music label stuff.
It's funny, man, because you encompass it all. So like realistically, what I love is creating moments or like fun for people. So even when I was younger, like I always wanted to be the life of the party. I wanted to have the best party. So for me, it's like, that's what I want. I want to create good times. So be that music, alcohol, events, whatever it is, it's like they all encompass the one thing. So it's like, I'm really passionate about making sure that people have great times and creating memories. Like that's what I'm actually passionate about. Because as I said, I think about morality, and I sit there and I go, well, I want to create these moments that people think about when they're 80 years old going, fuck, how good was that event? Or how good was that experience? Yeah. And they all encompass each other. So when I'm thinking of things I want to do, it's like, well, does this align with my good times mentality that I want to create memories for people? Yes, it does. Bang, I'm going to keep going with it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, mate. I love it. If there was like one piece of advice you had to check out, Danny, like if you're checking out the planet tomorrow, mate, and there's one piece of advice, you couldn't leave nothing else, but you just had to leave a piece of advice, a piece of wisdom that you could drop on the ears of the people on this podcast and the people around the world that could impact them and help them, empower them to go further in their mindset and their life, what would it be?
The things would be that you're never stuck in a circumstance. So like just because you did a course for 4 years doesn't mean you have to do something you hate forever. You can break those chains, be it family chains, be it work chains, be it whatever. You are the driver of your own destiny. You can continue to move off and veer off and do whatever you need to do. But also, like we've talked about earlier, like the biggest piece for me is like change your own circumstance by hanging out with better people. And that's not just friends. Like if your family is in that situation, which it was for me, it's like if you have to then move away from them for a bit to kind of create your own journey and step away from the destiny that's sort of been written from you because of that, do it. Because at the end of the day, it's like you've got full control of your future. You can do whatever you want. You can achieve whatever you want, but you've got to make sure that you're willing to be uncomfortable every now and then to ensure that you are comfortable down the track. So that would probably be the two biggest pieces of advice that I could give someone.
I love it, Danny. I love it.
Be okay with being uncomfortable.
I resonate with it entirely, mate. And I just want to say, like, thank you for your time, mate, coming on the podcast, man, and dropping. You've dropped some killer things on marketing, branding, aligning, breaking patterns, flipping perspectives in your life, fucking changing situations, coming back from nothing. Like, there's a lot of learnings in this for a lot of the people on the come up that just want to hustle and create something. And also a lot of people that have enjoyed your brand but probably don't know that you're behind it as well. I think that's very key and important for your audience to understand you as a brand owner and why you do what you do, and that love comes through in the products and stuff that you do, mate. It's been phenomenal. Before we go, can you just drop all your Instagrams, websites and all that stuff so that people can follow you, and I'll also tag them in the description of the podcast.
Cool. Yeah. So like effectively I've got a whole bunch of stuff, but probably the easiest way to find it is my own personal one. So that's at doomsday_Danny. Then we have like www.wetpussyshot.com.au. That's the website for that. www.80proof.com.au is our overarching company. And then from there, you'll be able to kind of navigate and find out anything else. But if you ever do want to find something out or ask me a question, just feel free to hit me up because I always answer. So.
Mate, no, and mate, same with me. Like, people can't believe that I answer my DMs on certain things and certain questions they ask, and I send people voice notes and all that stuff. Because at the end of the day, never get away from the fact that, you know, like 2 years ago, mate, I was on 6,000 followers. You know what I mean? Like,
it doesn't cost anything to do that, man.
Mate, it doesn't cost anything. It's a no-brainer. You don't know where these people that maybe some people would perceive less than you at this time or not in a position that you're in are going to be in the future. So just be kind to everybody. Kindness kills everything. You know what I mean?
I always think about that, man. Heaps of times, like, I don't even remember. So like artists I've worked with, they're like, dude, you're the first person who gave me feedback on this stuff. And now I'm this traveling artist around Australia. I'm just like, fuck, I didn't even know I did that. But that happens all the time. So like, that's a good lesson in itself, is that the amount of times I'll message someone and then I find out that they've become this huge success and they're like, thank you for replying to me. I'm like, that motivated me to do this. It's like, fuck, I'm so happy I could be a part of that journey, even though I don't remember it. But
you never know what position someone's in life. You know what I mean? Like, and how they're feeling and what they're dealing with in their life. It's like, there's even times when people are like, you know, Frankie's killing it with this, killing it with that, and I'm like, I'm missing my family, and it's just like a little kind comment from a stranger in a lift can just change your whole day. And 100%. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone's going through their struggles. Will Sparks goes through struggles. Example, the rapper, goes through struggles. I go through struggles. Danny goes through struggles. Every man and his dog's going through struggles in different aspects of their life, and it's just if you operate from a point of understanding that this other person, you don't know what they're going through, so let's just be kind. It kind of kills everything. Like, there's a lot of negativity in the world at the moment, but you don't need to be part of it. Yeah,
1,000,000%, man.
But mate, much love. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And guys, do me and Danny a solid favour on this, right? First things first, man. There's no cost of entry to listening to this podcast. However, if we've given you the value that I think you're going to get from this podcast, if me and Danny have instilled some value, instilled some methods in your life that's going to take you further, just send me and Danny a message. Let us know that we've impacted you in some way. That we would both appreciate that. Obviously, through our Instagrams, send us a DM. We read them all. Share this content with your friends. Tell other people about it, because there's no ads on this podcast. There's no bullshit. You're not being sold anything. This is just all pure value. If you've got any value out of it, like I'm passionate about, like Danny's passionate about coming here and giving up his time to do this, please share it with as many people as possible. Share it on your Instagram stories, share it on Facebook, share it, put it in groups, man. I honestly believe that this podcast is one of the best podcasts in Australia, and you know, I just need your help to share this message with as many people as possible. And all I can promise you in response to that is the fact that I'll keep delivering more and more value, and I'll keep getting guests like Danny to drop these stories in your ears to inspire you to be more, do more, break patterns, flip perspectives in your life. That is all I've got to say. Thank you again, Danny, for coming on here, and much love to all of you guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, drop it. Much love.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Frankie Lee Podcast.